We must get straight to it, mustn't we? Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day taxes that have sparked fears of a global recession. What's that noise? And fears of a loud noise in the studio. He announced punishing tariffs yesterday on goods coming into the US, and he actually had one of our own graphics here. You know, he's no expense spared. He produced a handy board during his speech in the White House, and we've got it here. So let's have a look, okay? So, we thought we'd go even more. Oh, I see. Hang on. We can come to the picture of the studio. That's fine. We're not embarrassed. Let's bring the boards in. They're here. What we're trying to do is go even more low-tech than Trump, and it's difficult. So it just is so much here. There is so much here. So the crucial way of understanding, if you take, well, New Zealand is your interest because Carolyn is the trade envoy to New Zealand. So he says the tariffs on USA goods are 20%, and he says we're giving you a discount, but we are going to charge 10%. And of course, immediately we look for our own country here, and let's just have a look. So EU, he's really slamming. This is what we've got to discuss, okay? Are we better off? He says they're doing 39, and we, the Americans, are doing to them 20. And then let's just find UK here. Is it in the first page here, UK? Where is it? Oh, we're here. Yeah, so 10% apparently we charge the USA. I don't know if that's true. 10% they're charging. So we are on the low end. I don't even know if anyone is... Have a look at what has he got with Sri Lanka. He's gone crazy. 44%. Yeah. You could see some cracking numbers here. But we are at the lower end. Barely any country gets away with it. And as I say, he obviously has been nicking our graphics. There are quite a lot of 10%. 50% on Why on earth? Well, because he says they just basically don't let anything into their country. Syria, he says, does 81% to the States, so 41% they're getting, a weird 22%. A lot of this is just half the tariff that he thinks USA is being hit by. So Vanuatu, he says, tariffs the USA 44%, and we're tariffing them 22. And one more for you, because it's fascinating, okay? This is the big news. I was waiting up last night for this to drop. Lots of... If you tariff the USA 10%, he hits you with 10%. And that's Martinique and Tonga and Mauritania and so on. If you tariff them higher, 50... I mean, there's hardly anyone on Norfolk Island. He hits you with 29%. He says Réunion, French dependency, 73, 37. So you could see the logic. He basically says, we'll look at what we think you're charging us and we'll do 50% back at you, and it's never going to be less than 10%. And this is Trump explaining why he decided to punish allies and adversaries alike.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. Our country and its taxpayers have been ripped off for more than 50 years, but it is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen.
OK, so have a look here. The big headline is, what is he doing to China? You've got to take these figures slightly under advisement. Is it right that the Chinese charge America 67%? It doesn't really matter. That's what he thinks. He's then saying, OK, we'll give you half of what you do to us. So that's I've sort of crossed that slightly, but 34% there. Interestingly, he identifies certain countries as being Chinese allies, which are used as portals, not Taiwan, portals for Chinese goods. Vietnam is one. Thailand is another. There and there. Vietnam is really getting slammed there. OK, trade envoy. This isn't good. This is not a good time to be a trade envoy, is it?
No, well, I mean, I think New Zealand have got off in the same...
Yes, they have?
Yeah, they have. And I think it's down to the diplomacy that's been used by certain governments in dealing with President Trump. I mean, this is probably the worst kept secret that he was going to do this, because this has been trailed for a long time.
The numbers were secret, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the work that's gone... I know, speaking from the UK's point of view, the work that's gone in behind the scenes to try to mitigate the damage has been quite phenomenal. And it's an ongoing discussion. And it was a time for cool heads. And I think the UK government have played a blinder on this.
Well, it's difficult to say how much better it could have gone for us, Albie. What do you think?
The UK government are playing a blinder, 10% tariff. I don't think that's a blinder. There's that brilliant Green Day song, isn't there, that goes, I don't want to be an American idiot. It's almost like Donald Trump woke up yesterday and said, I want to be an American idiot. If we look at what he is doing to international trade, this is absolutely terrible. He's starting a trade war on the scale that we haven't seen for decades, if not centuries, upending years and years of free trade, free market capitalism, which has lifted billions of people out of poverty, brought down consumer prices across the West, including in the US, including in Europe, because we're manufacturing things in countries like China.
Can we disagree with you? Can we disagree with you? I mean, we're in the 21st century. Things have changed. Chinese workers get paid peanuts, and therefore they can make stuff so cheaply that unless you tariff it, you put your own people out of work. I mean, that's what he's looking at.
Jeremy, what phone do you have?
Well, I've probably got one that's made in China.
Exactly. Would you want to pay more for your phone?
If it employed a British person, yes, absolutely.
Really?
Yes, I would.
You would pay 25%
I don't want it to be
more for your
substandard.
phone.
My issue is the issue is that if you say if you're British, you've got to have a British phone. We then go back to British Leyland, which was the car company that made cars, then their doors fell off on the motorway. I don't want that. But, you're right. Of course you're right. Customers benefit from free trade, but workers get hurt.
That is not correct.
But the power is in his hands, Albie. We can all have an opinion on what he's done is right or wrong. The power is in his hands. You have to work with him and not work against him. Because if you don't work with him and at least try to meet him and have a conversation with him, he'll just punish you more.
You think so? Is that how you deal with bullies normally?
Well, he's the president of the United States.
Well, Mark Carney.
He's got a huge amount of.
Carney's done a different. I think that's very interesting because, as you say, go on. Sorry,
Mark Carney takes a different view. He's the prime minister of a left-wing party in a Western country, very similar to the United Kingdom. I think there'll be a lot of Labour voters in the United Kingdom thinking, why can't Keir Starmer be more like Mark Carney? If it's working for Mark, why doesn't it work for Keir?
Well, there's going to be an election in Canada very shortly, so whether Mark Carney is the Prime Minister or not...
But his policy is making him more popular.
Yes, for sure.
We'll see what the reaction is after that.
It's interesting, up until this moment, if you say to people, what's Brexit given us, they basically would say the vaccine. You've got to go back 5 years. We had we had a vaccine rollout and the EU lagged. They've now got a second thing, and this is big. They can say we've swerved the horrible tariffs on the EU.
I don't think it's anything to do with Brexit.
Well, we only have to look at it.
This is not a Brexit bonus. This is down to the diplomacy that's been used by Keir Starmer and the British government in negotiating, and it's an ongoing
But maybe the
negotiation.
Germans tried it, and the Italians must have tried it. He loves Maloney. And it doesn't work.
Carolyn, stop talking about this diplomatic miracle that Keir Starmer has pulled off here. We have the same tariff rate as Brazil and the United States of America have an awful diplomatic relationship. So how can you say that Keir Starmer's played a diplomatic blinder by us getting the same tariff as Brazil?
Because we are working towards... what we can't have is trade war. And this is what will happen if we took a knee-jerk reaction, which Ed Davey wanted us to do, and we come on strong and we talk about a retaliation package, that will make things worse. You have to sit down and talk and try to come up with a trade deal that works for everyone. And you have to put the British strategy, the British economy first.
OK, let's just see what the Prime Minister said when he met business leaders in Downing Street this morning. He did admit the UK would suffer, but he said he would keep a cool head in response to Trump.
Last night, the President of the United States acted for his country, and that is his mandate. Today, I will act in Britain's interests with mine. Clearly, there will be an economic impact from the decisions that the US has taken, both here and globally. But I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Indeed, one of the great strengths of this nation is our ability to keep a cool head. Our intention remains to secure a deal, but nothing is off the table.
So just take a look here again, just looking at these countries that America, it's quite sophisticated, this. They think China is using Laos, and they think China is using formerly Burma, now Myanmar, as a conduit for Chinese goods. They say that they are responding to these massive tariffs, and they've been... Poor old Burma, which we're talking about its earthquake later, has been hit now by a 44% US tariff. Laos, 48%. The government weren't able to negotiate an exemption to the 10% tax, but they say their diplomatic approach to Trump, as we've heard from Carolyn, has been vindicated, and they argue that thousands more jobs could have been at risk had we been hit with the 20% that the EU has got. So we would love your calls on this, whether this is actually a real victory for Keir Starmer. 0207 862 2222. Already got David in Cumbria on the line. What do you think, David?
Hi, Jeremy. I agree with you on phones, but taking the thing, there's tariffs and tax. If Keir Starmer was really serious about making British people better off, he would increase the threshold from 12.5 to 20,000. That would make everybody.
You're talking about. Hang on. This is about income tax rates, right?
Yeah, income tax.
Yeah, but
rates.
But surely that's not. That's a different thing.
It is relevant though, because if you're going to make people better off,
you cut taxes.
If you had £1,500 more in your pocket, you wouldn't be worrying about the energy costs and not so much about the tariffs either.
Do you think we should hit Trump where it hurts?
I don't. I think the Americans are doing what they think is in their best interest. I disagree with them on tariffs.
Okay, thank you, David.
It's a huge error.
Thanks so much. After the break, we want to hear from more of you. From you. Do you think the UK escaping the worst of Trump's tariffs is actually a victory for Starmer, or do you believe actually we need to strike back? We haven't really done it. We've just got 10%. We need to do better. First, after the UK escapes the worst of Trump's trade taxes, is it a victory for Keir Starmer? What do you think? A big win for Keir? 0207 862 2222. With £60 billion worth of UK trade to the US hit, there are still fears that growth could completely stall, leading to a possible future recession or even tax rises. And 25,000 UK jobs could still be in jeopardy in the car industry alone. But let's look at what Trump is trying to achieve and what he's thinking of. So you're going back a little bit to the Wild West here, and this idea of the frontier. And here is the president on his horse at the border, looking out at other countries. There we are. That's the sign that says the border. He's using this laser focus, isn't he, to see the imports which he thinks are hurting Americans. And I'll give you an example of a hurting American. Here we are. The tired American factory worker whose job is threatened by cheap foreign goods. And just to sort of fill this in, let's make this person a manufacturer of aluminium windows, okay? And look at his head shaking. Look how miserable he is, because he knows he's being undercut the whole time by windows for $1,000 made in China. And he has, because his wages are higher, his sell for $1,500. So that's what Trump is. Of course, Trump is saying, I don't like that. And he's going to slap a tariff so the imports are more expensive. He's delighted, and then the customers have to buy his windows. Here's the problem. That's the customer. This is the problem here. The customer says, what do you mean? $500 more expensive. But it's also potentially a problem for the factory worker. Now, this is a whole line of trucks carrying aluminium, which the window manufacturer needs. He's put a tariff 25% on aluminium. So suddenly this guy's thinking, wait a minute, I know your tariff did that, but it doesn't help me make my American windows because I have to import the aluminium. And by the way, the 25% tariff on aluminium also goes for steel and cars worldwide into the States. So it affects us as well. So it's a very simple policy. It does, in a way, go back to the sort of American free spirit and liberation and the Wild West. But behind Trump, there are people you might not expect who will be hurting over it. And that, Albie, is the problem, is it not?
That is the huge problem. What people don't realise about tariffs, what people don't realise about increasing trade barriers, is actually an argument that was made by people who were anti-Brexit. So, Carolyn, you should understand this as well, is that when you increase trade barriers, it makes goods and services more expensive for consumers, and we're all consumers at the end of the day. So sometimes these populist ideas can sound very good on the offset, but actually, in the more mid to long term, it results in higher prices for all of us across the world.
Let's talk to Shelley, who's in Newcastle upon Tyne. What do you think, Shelley? Is it a massive win for Keir Starmer?
No, I think it's a laugh, actually, you're saying that. I mean, we've got 25% on cars, 25% on steel, and he's only matching the 10% what we charge them. And if you look at EU, they charge them 39%, and he's only charging 20%. And I'm worried with this deal, because they're on about that they could reduce the money what they companies pay here, that would be a massive kick in the teeth to our companies who they've just upped the taxes on.
You mean cut their profits, you mean, here?
What tech companies pay.
Services.
Oh,
taxes.
okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, the American tech companies are going to be taxed, yeah.
There's rumours going on about that they could, now that would be a kick in our teeth to our businesses.
But what about if, let's just, because Trump has made us think about this. Carolyn, there is an attraction, is there not, in going back to the 1800s, where we buy and sell stuff to each other, and we don't have stuff coming in from abroad.
That's an ideal world, but it's not going to happen, is it? We've moved on so much. We can't go back to that. And I come back to the point where you have to deal with this man. You have to actually have conversations with him. And because this is what Trump is about, signing orders in public, big showcase announcements. And he has the capacity to retaliate and hurt us a lot more.
He doesn't, I mean, he hasn't been subject to a single vote yet. As far as I can tell, Congress has not been involved. He's done 60 executive orders, including, by the way, banning cardboard paper straws. And Congress hasn't got involved. I mean, it just seems that he's decided...
Extraordinary.
He's found a way to do stuff on his own, basically, including throwing people out the country. Shelley, thank you very much. Alan in Blackpool, is it a big win for Keir Starmer?
It's Alan in Clacton.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I beg your pardon.
That's all right, Jeremy. That's fine. Absolutely.
In Clacton.
I feel absolutely in accord with Caroline. Caroline is absolutely sensible about what she's saying.
Oh, so, Carolyn, yeah. So what do you mean?
like
She said, can you narrow it down? Is there what particularly do you agree with?
I mean, Mr. Trump is the president of the United States of America. 350 million people have supported him. And he is feeling that we have taken him for a ride. And I quite agree that we may have done. But certainly other countries have. And he's charging us 10% tariff on our goods. That will make us come up to the line and be more efficient. We could do with being efficient in this country. We could do with start making our own shoes again instead of getting them from China.
Well, that's a good point. Just on shoes. Okay, Alan, that's a great point. Shoes is a great one. Let's say we say now, from now on, it's British shoes. No one's going to wear Chinese shoes anymore. I think I've got a pair of Chinese shoes on, by the way. They will be more expensive, Alan. You don't worry about that?
I do worry about that, but I also worry about the fact that we have become a nation of expectation and we feel that we are deserving of these things. We're not. We should work for them. We should not have about 10 pairs of shoes in the house. 3 pairs of decent English shoes would be much better than all the rubbish that we have.
So what a shout.
Living beyond our means.
If they're decent, listen, if they're decent English shoes, of course. But we do go back to British Leyland here, Albie, don't we? Which was a shambles.
It was a complete shambles. There are some very good British shoe companies out there. Ultimately, consumers decide what products they want to buy based on the price point, based on the quality, based on what they want. And we shouldn't be restricting the choice of consumers. Jeremy, if you want to buy those Chinese shoes, then you should be allowed to.
OK, I really want to know where they're from. I won't say the make, but I can't tell. I mean, it says a sort of a Brit.
Carolyn's got the best shoes.
Come on, let's have a look.
I think I've got the best shoes.
Go on. Oh, show me your shoes. Carolyn. I'm not going to ask you to take them off. OK, let me see. All right, here we go. So this is a British brand, Ted Baker. And I do like Ted Baker, but I can't afford much of the stuff, but I like these shoes. And I look down there and it says size 12, made in India. Classic, isn't it? Made in... And then I start to think, and I think there's been an expose on Ted Baker as well. I
think they've gone under now, haven't they?
Well, they've had, administration. But, was it a kid who made these? How much were they paid?
What was the supply chain? What was the modern slavery policy? So on and so forth.
Once you look at it, you think, I don't mind paying a bit more for a shoe, where I think the person who made them is in the UK and on a decent wage. I don't want my shoes to be made by a child, actually, who's then sent out in the afternoon to sweep chimneys. After the break, we're taking more of your calls on whether this has been a victory for Starmer. It looks good for Starmer at the moment, but maybe you're thinking, no, we've just got the crumbs from the table here. 0207 862 2222. Now, more calls on whether Keir Starmer has come out of this whole tariff thing covered in roses, or do you think, no, we've barely done better than all of these obscure countries like Réunion, which have got 10%. He's not treated us any better than them. 0207 862 2222. So we export to the US. That's the crucial thing. And these products will have a tax put on them before they go to the American consumer. So they will get less desirable because they'll be more expensive in American shops. Have a look at some of our most exported products. The classic is whiskey, isn't it? Where, we are selling Scotch whiskey particularly across the Atlantic to the States, 10% on that. You've also then got, cars, 25%. You've got cheddar cheese down here, by the way, various cheeses, 10%. You've got eggs, 10%. So we do export, incredibly, we export eggs. It's very surprising. Bit more cheese there. We've also got the metals. So here we've got some piping. Any sort of steel will definitely have a 25% charge on, as will the foil, the aluminium. Have I missed anything out here? Oh, sugar as well, 10% on that. Salmon, there's salmon. That's not cheese, that's salmon there. Yeah? So that's a selection of regularly exported British goods that will have this charge on. At least you could say, if you're a Euro skeptic, you'll say, well, at least we're not in the EU, because theirs is 20%. In fact, now, suddenly, we can export stuff that previously was going to America from the EU. So let's see what the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey said yesterday. He clashed with Starmer in the Commons for the government's refusal to join other countries in fighting back with revenge taxes.
I hope he is able to cut a deal, but I increasingly fear that the deal won't be good enough to avoid a global trade war. That's why I think one of the options must be to work with our European allies, our Commonwealth allies and others, because we don't tackle Trump's tariffs. We could be saying goodbye to free trade for a generation.
It's not sensible to say the first response should be to jump in to a trade war with the US. That cannot be the first response of the United Kingdom.
It's interesting, isn't it? John in Hertfordshire, what do you think? Has Starmer been a little bit averse to having that fight, do you think, or has he done the right thing?
I think he's averse to having the fight. I think the best thing he can do is to cancel Trump's visit to visit us to see the King.
Or charge him for the cheese or something, yeah?
Sorry?
Well, put a charge on it or something. I don't know, do something that makes the visit less comfortable than it was going to be.
No, just don't have the visit. Because if you cancel the visit, if Starmer comes on the telly tonight at the 6 o'clock news and says he's cancelling Trump's visit to the UK because of what he's done to us, that would really tick him off, because it's something you're doing to him. He can't retaliate to that.
Sure, but if you look, we haven't got them here, but the cards with all the tariff rates on, we are at the lowest level. There's no one that's below 10%, John. So we've squeaked it, haven't we?
We've got, well, it gives, if we do that to him, first of all, then it gives us time to look at what we can put tariffs on.
Okay.
I think we should put tariffs on American cars, and especially on Tesla. I know they're not. I would do anything, think of things that we can do that would tick him off. Okay, John, you've not a diplomat, John, but he's on it. He's properly on it. Fight back. I mean, we could ban. Go on.
It's the King have extended the invitation, not the government.
Look,
so the King is not going to resend any invitation to the Prime Minister or the President of the United States.
But the King takes an interest. What if his biscuits get hit, for example? Well, I mean, they will. But
he's not going to resend an invitation after it's given.
OK. Ruben in Suffolk, what do you think? Has Keir Starmer had a good day?
Relatively speaking, it's 50-50. I'll give him 5 out of 10. He's done. In principle, he's wrong. Tit for tat should be the message. But
what would you do? We just heard from John saying the King has got to cancel the state visit. What would you do apart from that?
That is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. And I'm a pretty average monarchist, but I can't see that that's relevant to the whole economic situation. What I would like to suggest, and the gentleman earlier touched on this, if you upped the rate of tax, and this does tie in, I know it's not spot on relevant, but it feeds into it. If you up the bottom rate of tax from 20 to 22%, the middle band, leave it alone, and the top band, you drop that to points. Then the follow-through is, of course, a millionaire or a billionaire. He don't want a whole fleet of motor cars. He may or may not, in the odd case, have a private jet.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he can have that.
Okay.
He may have a Rolls Royce, and he may have a Mini.
Brilliant, Ruben, but we've got to move on. Thank you. Stephen, Greater Manchester, what do you think?
Hiya. The 10% tariff, it depends on how you look at it. We only get a 10% piece. Agreed?
Sorry, we only get 10% piece.
We've only got a 10% increase on tariff.
Yeah, that's true, except for cars and aluminium and steel, yeah.
Yeah, 25%, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it depends on how you look at it. We get 10%, that's not a problem. But America, they will have to pay 37%, is it? For components from Taiwan, China, places like that.
Yep, that's a big old thing.
Every mortal electrical device, as far as I know, all the components are made over there.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, very much. It's a good point. Thank you for all your calls. We must talk again about this later.